The Treasury Secretary is hiring. Secretary Bessent is reportedly looking to recruit a new top cop to help his crackdown on waste, fraud, and abuse. The new senior role will police nonprofits that use and abuse their charity status to dodge taxes. Bessent is hoping to end the excessive political activities, lobbying, and fraud festering across these taxpayer-funded organizations. And so I think this is a step in the right direction. Let's get the nonprofits that aren't paying taxes. But Caroline, given everything else that's going on in the news right now, the story in Minnesota, what we're learning about California, there's a substantial amount of actual fraud that is far worse than just dodging some taxes.
Yeah, and I think what the Minnesota case has also exposed is that a lot of these nonprofits are really just a backdoor for imposing the progressive agenda across the country. And George Soros, his Open Society foundations, they are helping tremendously. And it's across all of the progressive issues, climate change, but also, Islamic relations. We know that the Tides Foundation, this is just one example, has donated a ton to CARE, and some states have designated CARE as a domestic terrorist organization. Right. Mm-hmm. How is that allowed to fly? Not really sure, but I think this is a good effort to have more oversight and accountability.
And it appears that Mr. Bessent had somebody who was working for him who recently departed to join the SEC, Michael Friedman. He was putting together a short list of people, candidates who could fit the job description that might be good for this. Bessent was also sort of looking at the Fed candidates for President Trump. Mm-hmm. He suggested two candidates that were not the one that got the job. Now, I don't think Trump is going to, approve this or not approve this, but we all love Scott Bessent and think he's very smart. I'm just wondering if you think that he, his short list is going to have the person with the right stuff for this.
I don't know if his short list is going to get the job. But I do think this is the right fight to have. So here's maybe this is a controversial statement, but is the charitable tax contribution part of the tax code really relevant anymore? Like, should we even have 501c3 status in America?
Interesting.
I think, yes. Okay, so let's talk about that, because I think that has become perhaps the most abused corner of the financial world in America right now. It is so shady. We have no idea what happens there. Hundreds of billions of dollars, I think, get flooded through that system. I don't know that there's really any public benefit to a lot of these organizations, frankly, which they're supposed to be.
One word.
Yeah.
Churches.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that, but do we want to keep that whole code for churches?
Right. You could separate
or
it.
could you narrow it? I think something radical has to be done, because to your point, this is the conduit by which the left tries to run America.
I have a middle ground between you two, but you go first and argue.
No, I made my point. I think there's a lot of people that you would take completely out of play if they did not have the tax exemption from 501c3 status. And number one is the country's religious groups, and I think they deserve that protection because we want them separated out.
Here's the problem, Brian. The IRS does not require independent audits from 501c3s. Now, you could argue there's some state-level things that they go through, but instead of getting rid of them, here's two options. One, you have to require accounting, forensic analysis. We do that every time. We just talked about it. Disney stock. They are required quarterly to file updates and analysis and to tell us how the business is going. We should require 501c3s to do that. Any of this should be required to do heavy forensic accounting. And I don't care if it's onerous. If you're getting non-tax dollars or federally funded dollars, you should be required to show up and tell me how that money is being spent. Also, here's another idea that I like potentially from Scott Bessent. If an organization devotes too much time or money to influencing legislation, it risks being reclassified as a different type of entity that does not offer tax deductions to its donors. Now, then we could open up the debate, well, how much is too much time spent on legislation or lobbying or trying to influence an outcome? But I think that that's a good first step to say, if you're spending your time trying to lobby me instead of doing your own job because you want more federally funded taxpayer dollars, you are no longer allowed to be called a 501c3 or whatever we're calling you.
But question, wouldn't that be a 501c4 isn't that a separate arm, the lobbying arm? 501c3 is supposed to be separate from 501c4. That's just one thing I was going to ask. But the other thing is, so there's so many insidious organizations on the left that are in the business of undermining America. Soros, Tides, Ford, all those foundations. But the other side of that coin, to Jerry's point, what about the free market think tanks that are in the business of educating the public, including young people on college campuses, about the merits of capitalism? And they're actually genuinely trying to educate and keep the republic intact rather than promote anarchy on our streets through criminal justice reform and all these other things. So I think you need to have a healthy combination of both. And it's just unfortunate that sometimes those left-wing nonprofits will thrive.
But this isn't an example of the recent fraud that's been uncovered, where you sit back and say the few ruin it for the others that are doing the right thing and trying to uphold the standards. But we live in a society, I mean, this to me, I'm almost thinking about what I've said about healthcare, which is that you just have to rip apart the entire system and start from ground zero and start over. But you know, when you think about the waste, fraud, and abuse in this country and doing that at every single level, like Elon Musk tried to do it, he ran into a lot of hurdles, although he did have some success with it, but we'd be ripping apart every single thing. And then you've got two parties that are completely at odds with each other. And so it's impossible to find consensus on anything, even when you do rip it apart, to restructure and build it up again. And so I just don't know that it's possible.
How about get rid of these nonprofits that get government money? That's my biggest problem is with those. Like taxpayers have their money, not voluntarily, sent to a nonprofit who gets this great
it's a place
benefit.
to start.
Like just stop that. If you want to give your money voluntarily to somebody, fine.
Well, and this comes back down to who the left would say that they are better stewards of our money than we are. They're giving our federally taxpayer money to entities that they deem
to the
fit.
Leering Center.
To the Leering Center.
Right.
We generally believe I'm a better steward of my money than the government. I will give to my church, regardless of if they're a 501c3 or not, because I know how, within my budget, what I want to do. I don't need the government to do it on my behalf. I'm a better steward of my hard-earned money.
I can tell you that much of religious America applies for federal government grants all the time. And they apply for money for really simple things that allows them to operate. So it's tough weeding out the bad guys from the good guys, I got to tell you.
All right.